At Fort Apache Reservation, Arizona, a man stands over the corpse of a cow. He's dressed comfortably in jeans, a long-sleeve button-up, a vest, and a headband. But the night seems cold and heavy as the rifle held in his hand. The body lying on the ground before him has been torn open. It isn't unusual for something to prey on cattle, but not like this. The poor animal's side has been split totally open, its ribs shattered and missing. Whatever did this is big. Something prickles the back of the man's neck. He twists around, bringing his gun to bear, and the killer stands revealed. The thing towers another torso height over the man. His knees are bent backward, ending in feet tipped with 3 claws. Powerful, long arms have claws at the fingertips, and an animal hide covers his head and back, obscuring his human face. The Skinwalker closes in. Above the world, the airplane called the Living Room cruises comfortably through the night sky. Long-time listeners might remember that this plane is the home of the Other's most secretive member, the Operative. We find the old man at a communications console with his mask off. A woman's face shows on the screen with black hair swept back from her face. She looks severe and tells the Operative that she is sick of these games. She wants her son back. The Operative refuses to do so, and she knows why. "You're holding him hostage because I know who you are, Joshua Cole," she responds angrily. But the old man doesn't take the bait. "You only know one of my names," he says, "and frankly, you aren't getting the boy back because he deserves a better mother." Aaron, the Operative's grandson and general pilot of the Living Room, walks into the scene. "What's going on? We have a new job?" The Operative quickly shuts the call down, exasperatedly asking if Aaron should be flying the plane. The younger man leans against a side table, saying that the plane pretty much flies itself. Aaron doesn't have much to do with it, actually, and as he gazes at Vostok's golden helm, he adds, "I don't have much to do with anything around here." A burst of golden energy suddenly interrupts the pair, allowing Aquaman, Yawara, 2 Jaguars, and Prisoner of War to teleport in. "Joshua, I need you," Aquaman says. And you can practically hear the old man roll his eyes. "I assumed, given that you're here." He warns Yawara that rug is expensive and rare, so watch your pets. "They aren't her pets," she says. "They're no one's pets." He orders Aaron to take them down to the galley. Put down some newspaper and give them some raw meat, too. Aaron jumps too, eager to help, but the cats growl at him. The Operative looks at Yawara, and she tells them to please not eat the boy. Once Aaron is gone, Aquaman gives us the lowdown. The Scavenger has been collecting Atlantean weapons from the ocean floor and reselling them. Prisoner asks if Arthur wants them to take care of him. But no, he says that Atlantis has it. More importantly, there is a power glove in Arizona that can punch through steel, stone, and flesh, and Atlantis can't handle that. Between the desert climate being bad for Atlanteans and the fact that America really wouldn't want Atlanteans on their soil right now, he needs help. But this isn't really a Justice League matter either. Can the others secure the glove for him? Prisoner shakes his head. For Atlantis? For its king? No. But for our friend Arthur? Absolutely. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown episode 26.18 of Aquaman, A Haunting in Xebel. So we interrupt your regularly scheduled Aquaman story for a fill-in issue. Our first fill-in issue in this entire run, actually, which is kind of mind-boggling to think that this book made it almost 2 years with the same solid creative team. I guess other than the fill-in issue with, who was it? Pete Woods? This caught me off guard, as, again, I don't remember this issue at all. I was pretty certain that the others never showed up again at all during this run, and that's just how wrong I was. Poking around online, there's no given reason for this issue's existence either. The original solicitation for Aquaman issue 20 in Previews magazine was what we're going to get in our next issue, issue 21. So the original plan had to change at some point, and we changed into this comic. I would guess that it's very likely that author Geoff Johns just fell behind production schedule. I know that Paul Pelletier is an incredibly fast penciler, so I doubt that it was his end that really fell behind. But author Johns was not only writing Aquaman and the Justice League ongoing series at the time, but he was also writing the Justice League of America, Green Lantern. He co-wrote the Justice League of America's Vibe ongoing series. He wrote the first volume of Batman Earth 1 in 2012, and he was preparing for the big Forever Evil crossover event while participating in the Trinity War crossover event that was taking place in his two Justice League books and Justice League Dark. Geoff Johns was an incredibly busy man, and so I think that it's no great surprise that eventually he did miss a deadline. I'm not giving him crap over this. I'm not saying that Geoff Johns can't handle his workload. If anything, I'm really impressed that he managed to put out this many books on time and in such excellent overall shape all at the same time. That's crazy to me. Like, how does he do that? Does this man ever walk away from a computer? That's not even considering the stuff that he was doing as one of the main creative heads at DC. And I know that eventually he became one of the main heads of their film division, but I'm not sure where that timeline lines up with the comic book production timeline. The point is, Geoff Johns was a busy guy. Something's bound to slip at some point, and unfortunately for us, it was Aquaman. Bound to happen sometime. But sometimes we all need help. And so he called on author John Ostrander to write a fill-in issue. Ostrander is a legend in the comic book industry, although definitely with more of a DC lean to his history. I know him best as the guy who made the Suicide Squad, into a thing before their modern popularity, as well as being the guy who transformed Barbara Gordon into Oracle after she was paralyzed by the Joker. Longtime listeners of the show might remember that Ostrander actually did some fill-in issues for Gail Simone's Secret Six ongoing series, which we covered quite extensively back in episode 6 of this very podcast. Ostrander is a solid writer, and we see that already on display with this issue. In just a few opening pages, we've met our main threat, met and been reintroduced to the others, just in case you missed the others' story arc. We've been given some behind-the-scenes drama regarding the operative and Aaron, and we had an in-story justification for this adventure. That's efficient, it all works, and it feels pretty natural. I even like the meta-parallel of Geoff Johns calling in help to keep Aquaman's release schedule on time, and then that help writes a story about Aquaman calling in some help to keep the world safe from Atlantean threats. That's just kind of neat. I suppose the most awkward part to me of this scene is Arthur saying that this isn't a Justice League issue, which just rings as bullshit. That's just a weak reason to not include those characters. The League has seen how dangerous Atlantean weapons can be. We just had a whole crossover about it. And during the 2 issues where the Justice League hunted down the cheetah, they specifically told Wonder Woman that this is part of why the League exists, for them to help one another with their problems. So Arthur saying that they just don't feel right for this job completely flies in the face of that Justice League story. And admittedly, if you haven't been reading Justice League, you don't know that, but again, it just reads as poorly thought out. It would have been easier to just say that the League is busy with something else. You don't even have to say what they're doing, just something else, because that is totally believable and you don't need to prove it at all. I would believe that the Justice League has problems to deal with, that's fine. Plus, the Power Glove connects back to issue 5 of this series, which saw Arthur dropped in a desert. Remember me complaining ad nauseum about how the story never tells us what desert Arthur is in, or why the Atlanteans were flying over a desert at all? Well, we still don't know the why of that, but now we know the desert. That Power Glove that Arthur sent the others after is what the strike team used to break into the military facility to retrieve the A-glyph. So we've got setup, drama, and continuity, baby. We're off to a great start here. This issue also sees the guest creative team of penciler Manuel Garcia, inkers Sandra Hope, Rob Hunter, Ray McCarthy, and Rain Foucher, plus colorist Pete Pantazis. Garcia has a pretty realistic style in general, with lots of heavy inks and shading necessary to complete the look. So if you were wondering why there were 4 inkers for this single comic book, that's why. At least partially. I'm confident that it was a mix of the heavy inking needed, and you needed a lot of hands on deck to get this issue out on time. Again, this is a surprise fill-in issue, so it's a little bit of a rush job. Hilariously, the cover for this issue was still drawn by Paul Pelletier. The cover also credits Johns, Pelletier, and inker Sean Parsons for the entire issue, although the proper team is credited on the inside. To me, that just indicates of how much of a rush job this issue must have been in order to get it out on time. They didn't even double-check their cover credits. So let's get back into this one. We return to Fort Apache, but this time we're at a nicely sized wooded cabin. A green Jeep sits nearby. A young woman sits on the porch, dressed in a shirt with a diamond pattern around the top and brown pants. Red feather earrings hang from her ears, and a stack beaded necklace encircles her neck. This is Sky, and she's talking to an older woman who is wrapped in a blanket nearby. Victorio, who appears to be in his late 20s or 30s, tells Sky that their mother is dead when she reports that's who she's talking to. She knows that their mother is dead. She died when Sky was a little girl. But she still talks to her. Victorio dumps out what remains of his coffee. Yeah, well, next time you see her, ask her who killed her then. Sky says that she has, but it seems to make Mother sad, so she stopped asking. It also seems like maybe something keeps her from talking about it. Victorio goes back inside, setting his cup down on the table. Their grandmother stands at the stove, stirring a pot. He wishes that she would stop filling Sky's head with all this shamanistic nonsense. Why? Is me being a medicine woman nonsense too? Grandmother asks. Here, the man has to balk. No, it's not that. It's just that people are going to think Sky is weird. Anglos will think that she's weird, Grandmother says. Our people respect those who walk here and in the ghost lands. Maybe you're just embarrassed by her. Victorio stares at her. I love Sky. I just want to protect her. You scared off every boy who's ever looked at her, Grandmother replies. So it's working. Victorio goes to leave. He's meeting Uncle Carl at Gateway Arroyo before work. Grandmother returns to her cooking. That one. He wants Victorio to become a good Anglo like him and his father. Sky and Victorio hug before he leaves for the day, adding that he'll be home in time for dinner. Once he leaves, Sky reports to their grandmother that he won't be back in time for dinner. He'll be back late. She then grabs a red backpack and heads out the door. Grandmother asks, "Will you be all right?" Sky pauses to look at her. Maybe. We'll see how this goes. It depends on what the others that she's about to meet do. As she leaves, we look back at the cabin, and we see Grandmother and Mother watching over her. Be well, Grandmother says. Be safe. So now we've met Sky, a young Apache woman who is gifted with psychic abilities. She can speak to the dead, for sure, and maybe see the future, if only kinda sorta. And she is clearly going to meet with the others, capital O, although her dialogue is vague enough that I don't really think she knows that she is referring to a team named the Others. She's just referring to another group of people, period. Or maybe her premonitions are incredibly subtle and she doesn't even understand why she has called them the Others. We don't really get why her powers work the way they work. We just kind of get to see them working, which is great. In any case, this scene is clearly meant to establish who Sky is, what her life is like, and set up the drama that we're about to watch unfold. We know that Sky has powers and that she, at least, is totally comfortable with them, even if the people around her aren't, exemplified by her brother Victorio. Her family is caught between their ancient culture and ways, such as Grandmother and Sky being medicine women, and the present, represented by Uncle Carl, and to some degree Victorio, who leans more Anglo, meaning white. We know that Victorio is protective and that Skye is just a little bit hungry for male attention. She not only complains to her mother about it in her opening scene, but then grandmother reinforces that idea to us. You're scaring off all the boys, Victorio. Skye wants to meet new people, and she is not being allowed to, but she is about to get that wish fulfilled. I don't know how important it'll be to the overall narrative, but we do also see that Skye's family doesn't have a lot of money. Their house is solid, sure, but it's also old. The windows in the kitchen are shattered, but still standing. The stove is a wood-burning one, with pipes snaking through the kitchen and up through the roof. This is a pretty humble family, but they also clearly care for one another. We follow Victorio to Gateway Arroyo, a valley cut through the American West. Uncle Carl is there driving a big yellow Hummer and wearing a nice black suit and shades. His black hair is worn back in a long braid. Carl suggests, again, that Victorio should leave the reservation like he and his dad did. They make more money out there, and the Alchise name still has some weight to it. He could get him a job with Peter's Mining. There's money there, power, respect. Victorio thanks him, but it's just not his path. Victorio then looks into the arroyo. Are they really going to dig here? No one does anything here. The place has a reputation for being evil, too. Uncle Carl smiles and folds his arms. That kind of stuff only matters if you think it's real, and he certainly does not. What he's looking for is down there. He knows it. Victorio says, yeah, sure, that's great, but it's time for him to go. A cougar killed some cattle and their farmer last night, and he needs to go take a look before he heads into the office. Hoping to be home in time for dinner, you know? Bye, Uncle Carl. Think about what I said, Carl shouts after him. As Victorio drives away, his uncle tips his glasses down, revealing red, glowing eyes. So this guy's the Skinwalker, right? Like, 100% that's obvious, right? Skye is our lead character for this issue, and she represents the power of the past. She can see things that no one else can. She can talk to spirits, see the future. She represents the power of Apache traditions and history. Uncle Carl then represents modernity, turning his back on the superstitious past unless it benefits him. But shockingly, not turning his back on his family. He still offers Victorio a job. He still wants what's best for him, unless Uncle Carl has a second motive that we haven't seen yet and he's been secretly evil the whole time, which, you know, it's comic books, maybe. And we have seen that the Alchise could use the money, demonstrated by the dilapidated conditions of their cabin. But even Victorio isn't willing to leave his immediate family yet. That connection is still more important to him than any of the money. Carl also mentions that the Alchise family name has weight, quote, never mind your dad, end quote. So Dad must have done something to slander the family name somehow. No wonder Victorio is so sensitive about how his little sister is viewed and treated. He probably got that same kind of treatment based on whatever happened with their father. Above the desert, the living room is suddenly struck by a bolt of lightning from a perfectly clear sky. The operative puts it down easily on the hard-packed desert ground and orders Aaron to give the plane a once-over. By the time he gets to the dropping ramp, though, Skye is outside waiting for them, and she just walks right on in. Her clothing has changed. She now wears a purple and orange poncho belted with red discs. Her mouth and nose are covered in white paint, contrasting with her darker skin tone. "Oh, this is grand," Skye says, taking the interior in. "Do you live here?" she says to Aaron. As Skye gets further inside, she then sees Vostok's helmet. "Ah," she says, "the new owner hasn't come for it yet." The spirits tell her that he's not ready, he's still underground. Then she really lights up. "Ah, there's her gift." She sees the seal of clarity on display and reaches for it. But Yawara is fast, boy. She swats the girl's hand away, and Skye falls back. The two jaguars stare her down, snarling. Dominic jumps in front of the girl, telling Yawara no! But she holds her ground. She ain't giving the seal to the first person who comes for it. That's not how this works. Sky chides herself for her behavior, even as she pets the now calm cats. She sometimes forgets that just because she knows someone, that doesn't mean that they know her. She introduces herself and says that the seal is not Yawara's to give or to keep. It is Kahina's. Yawara quietly says that Kahina is dead. Sky knows. She explains about walking in both the regular world and the ghost world. It was the spirits of Vostok and Kahina who actually told her to seek them out. She tells Yawara that Kahina knew how she felt about her, about the love that she had for the woman. But she also knew that Yawara kept that to herself out of respect for Kahina's beliefs and her marriage. Sky carefully places her hand on the older woman's cheek. Kahina might not have loved her in the way that she wished, but she did love Yawara, truly and deeply, Sky says. Kahina wanted you to know that. Yawara puts a hand over Sky's for just a moment. When she turns to look at the men, a single tear runs down her cheek. The seal is hers. The conversation then shifts to what Sky is doing here, and she exposits all over the place. The lightning beings told her that the others would be here. They are the ones who caused the plane to land, actually, and they need her to retrieve the power glove and to stop the Skinwalkers. According to Sky, Skinwalkers are men who follow the witchery path, and they are pure evil. They can take the shape of any animal that they wish, and even possess another person's body. There is an arroyo that exists at the intersection of the ghost world and the living world. Once, a city of Skinwalkers lived there, but the Thunder Beings defeated them and sealed the cave. Now, a new Skinwalker seeks to use the power glove to uncover the cave and add their power to its own. If he can, the Skinwalker will have an army at his command. And we see the Skinwalker do just that, punching through a stone wall into a massive cavern. Ghostly green forms of hair and teeth wait for him with glowing red eyes. The others teleport in using Yawara's orb, Sky shouting for them to remember what she said, remember the plan. The operative bristles at her command. He's been doing this since before her father was a boy. He charges at the Skinwalker, and together with Yawara, they begin to fight him. Prisoner, meanwhile, is using the manacles to hold the other Skinwalker ghosts back. But there are too many, and he can't hold for long. Sky tells him to send his soldiers into battle then. He hesitates, saying that he sent them into a fight once before and they died. He can't do that to them again. They can't die, Sky argues. They're dead. They are here to serve. They want to serve. That is their purpose. They need orders from their commander. Prisoner appears to whistle, and he shouts for the Ghost Patrol to back them up. About 5 or 6 ghostly soldiers appear and begin to open fire on the ghost Skinwalkers. But things aren't going so well for the other half of this team. Yawara and the operative are down, although still alive, and the Skinwalker pulls off its animal pelt. It's Uncle Carl! Oh no! How unexpected! And Sky sees him. Killing her mother gave him so much power, he says. How much more will he gain from killing her? With his army of Skinwalkers, even the Thunder Beings will fear him. Sky holds up a hand, and it glows blue. She doesn't just walk the Ghostlands. She brought them here, and with them came the Thunder Beings. And they don't like Carl's plans. 4 thin black forms rise up around Sky, adding their power to hers, and a blast of lightning and thunder erupts from her hand. It slams into Carl, pushing him back. The others then do their parts. Prisoner orders the Ghost Patrol to fall back. The operative uses his Atlantean artifact to lock the golden energy dome in place, I guess, sealing the Skinwalkers in. Yawara teleports them all out. The cave then collapses on Carl Peters and his ghostly army. As the sun sets, the others are walking to the living room. Aaron reports that the plane is fine and good to go. The operative is eager to be gone, quickly leaving the last three behind. Yawara and Prisoner say their goodbyes to Sky. They know where to find her when they do need her, she says. The plane takes off, leaving Sky with her mother. They are good people, yes, if troubled. She thanks her mom for being proud of her and tells her that she loves her. Which closes out our first fill-in issue. It's largely an introduction to Sky, who will indeed go on to become a part of the others. As such, she is a critical, if not the critical character to this story. In fact, I would argue that the others are pretty much background characters in this. They aren't poorly written, I'm not saying that. I actually like what author John Ostrander does with them here, but they are clearly not our focus at the same time. Sky's emotional reveal to Yawara regarding her feelings about Kahina was great, telling us something about Yawara that we never knew before, that she is bi, and that she was in love with Kahina. There was no way that Sky could possibly know that about Yawara, so it works to prove that Sky not only has powers, but that Kahina trusts her with such potent emotional weight. And if Kahina trusts Sky, then the others can too. Once again, Kahina is kind of the emotional bedrock of the team, even from beyond the grave, and that's really cool. I'm not sure what the Seal of Clarity will really do for Sky, given that she's already clairvoyant, but we'll see it if we get there, I suppose. The scene with Prisoner and the Ghost Patrol is pretty nicely done, exploring a part of Prisoner's powers that we have never seen before. All of his previous appearances just had him channeling the ghost's skills, like, through his own body, not having the ghosts going around doing things, which is a neat evolution. It does make me wonder, though, if the Ghost Patrol's membership is shrinking as Dominic visits their families and they're able to find peace and move on. Or do they not move on to the afterlife after he does those kinds of things? Admittedly, we haven't really seen what happens after one of Dominic's visits. Like, we did see the ghostly figure kind of fade away during his last appearance, but does that mean the figure was just fading out of the scene and we couldn't see them anymore, or were they actively moving on to the next step? We don't really know, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't think we would see the character again. I had kind of just written off, we'll never know what happens. It gives me a little bit of hope, actually, to read this and see Prisoner's powers get explored a bit more, because I go, oh, well, if he shows up again, maybe they will continue to do so. I don't think that's likely, but maybe. And, of course, with the operative, we get that background drama of him maybe kind of sort of kidnapping his grandson in order to keep him away from his mother. And the reveal of his true name. Or maybe an alias. It depends if we believe him. Perhaps the best part of this issue for me regarding the operative is actually how much Sky gets under his skin. Yawara says at the end of the issue that Sky's power allows her to see secrets, and the operative treasures his secrets more than anything. So that's a really interesting power dynamic, allowing Sky to undercut the operative with ease, really, kind of jeopardizing his self-perceived role with the team. That doesn't really come into play in this story, but it is a fun idea to maybe see later on. It's a fun group dynamic that I'd love to see get explored more. So everyone gets a moment to shine in this issue, or a personal reveal, or a unique power display, which is really great to see for a standalone fill-in issue. It's easy to write these kinds of issues off as a comic book reader because they generally don't affect our main narrative, like this did not. And obviously it kind of just interrupts what has been going on in the comic. But Ostrander doesn't let the fill-in status stop him from doing and setting up interesting things. Given that Ostrander does go on to write the Aquaman annual in December of 2013, I wonder if his work here on this issue is what earned him the opportunity to do that issue in the future. The plot elements regarding Sky are fine. It all reads as a little bit too obvious for my tastes, but it all makes sense and works well enough. I like Sky and how self-assured she is, despite how strongly she won't fit into normal Anglo-white society. She's a perfect fit for the others, in my mind, as none of those characters do either. They all exist in the margins. But Her ability to uncover secrets is a great source of tension with the operative. She can see Dominic's ghosts in a way that maybe no one else can, and she has clearly formed an emotional connection with Yawara now. This character was made for this role, and I mean that literally, and I can't really complain about that. Artistically, I can complain that this issue doesn't really do anything for me at all. It's incredibly rough and uneven in terms of overall quality, which I'm sure is due to the book having 4 different inkers and probably a pretty rushed production schedule. The coloring is fairly plain with lots of browns. Just brown everywhere. The backgrounds, the caves, Sky's clothing, the Skinwalker, all boring old brown. The desert can really be a place of brilliant color and warmth. I can't help but think of the artwork from the Marvel's Gunhawks one-shot back in 2019. Colorist Niraj Menon and Rochelle Rosenberg made the desert setting sing in that comic book. And that's just not happening here. Breakdown covered almost all of Marvel's modern Western comics about a year ago. There's a whole playlist of them that you can listen to, and I talk at length about this Gunhawks one-shot. Unfortunately, this was back before I was doing actual full videos, so you can't look at the pretty pages, but maybe someday. I don't know. Anyways, along artistic lines, I do have to say that Sky doesn't really stand out as a character either. Yawara, Prisoner, and the Operative all have very distinct looks. Sky, however, looks unfinished, I think is the best way I can put it. I can't tell if her costume change halfway through the issue is intentional, like, is this her battle gear? Is this her superhero outfit? Or did the creative team just goof from the beginning of the issue to the end of the issue? And even once her costume changes, the new costume doesn't really tell me anything new about the character. I suppose I could guess from it that Sky is an indigenous person, but as far as her powers, skills, or personality is concerned, this costume tells me absolutely nothing. And that's kind of the point of a superheroic costume, right? From a comic book costuming perspective, I don't think that she looks very good. I will freely admit that I am unfamiliar with Apache designs or clothing, so maybe there is a depth or meaning here that I'm just not aware of and I don't understand. I ran around the internet looking for background or commentary on her design, trying to maybe find a little bit more, but I could not find anything. This issue was kind of just like, they announced it was going to happen, they published the issue, and then everybody moved on. I have no more context for anything else going on in this book. As far as fill-in issues go, this works. I don't think it's a great issue, and it absolutely interrupts the established narrative that was going on, but I don't really think you can get around that with this. I'm also a bit torn on Ostrander having the book pick up the threat of the Atlantean Power Glove at all. On the one hand, it is a nice use of continuity. On the other hand, we still don't know why a group of Atlanteans who live in the Atlantic Ocean would fly across the American desert when retrieving the A-glyph at all. I think Arthur's stated motivation for retrieving the glove is a bit flimsy as well, as are his reasons for not asking the others for further help from here on out. Arthur is juggling a lot of plates in Atlantis right now, and I would argue that he could use all the help that he could get. Even if he had the Atlanteans hunt for the Scavenger, but then had the others take him out, I mean, that would make sense. Or have the others work in concert with the Drift, policing Atlantean weapons and hunting the Scavenger, which would then free up Arthur to do all the kingly things that Tula keeps pointing out you're not doing. But Arthur has been shown to have trouble trusting others and asking for help. So it makes sense that he would not continue to call the others in, but I mean, we contradict that idea by Arthur calling in the others for help with this issue. Thank you, cell phone. We also have the opening scene with the Skinwalker, which immediately tells us what our main threat is, and then when Uncle Carl pulls down his shades right after Victorio tells him about something eating cattle and a farmer, like, I really do feel like it telegraphs his role in this like 100,000%. And then, I mean, Uncle Carl says that he works for a mining company, which is the perfect cover for digging into the canyon, right? But then it isn't the company doing the digging into the canyon at all. It's just Uncle Carl punching through a wall. Like, why even have him work for the mining company? Why the setup if we're not going to do anything with it? It would have made more sense to me if Carl had been using his Skinwalker form to kill animals and people for like weeks, trying to scare them away from the arroyo, right? Then the mining company that he works for could bid to work in that area and then come in and do the digging for him. And you know what this is? No, that's not right. You know what this is? This is a Scooby-Doo episode. The others show up to investigate the Power Glove, right? They're met by local Sheriff Victorio, whose kid sister Sky is hanging out with him because of school problems, meaning the local Anglo school thinks that she's weird and sent her home for the day. They ask about any recent problems, like, I don't know, maybe regarding a Power Glove, and he says, no, that kind of stuff doesn't happen around here. Some people up at the dig at the arroyo have been killed recently, but that was by a wild animal, probably a coyote or a wolf, maybe a cougar. Sky insists that it's a Skinwalker, but Victorio doesn't believe that crap because he's a modern man. Yawara, however, believes the girl because she has a connection to mystical stuff, and they go investigate because why not? They've nothing else to do here. At the mine, they're met by Uncle Carl, who doesn't approve of Victorio's life choices, and even he thinks that Sky's a little weird. Maybe Sky even thinks Uncle Carl is weird because she can kind of sort of sense that he's a Skinwalker, but she doesn't quite have the lowdown on that yet. Uncle Carl then offers to give the others a tour of the caves. This would give Sky time to share a personal moment with each of the others, highlighting her powers and forming bonds with the group. I think that the only one that she wouldn't do this with would probably be the operative, who would have spent his time in the tunnels with Victorio, because they're two men in charge who are working together. They're both the older figures in their respective units. Uncle Carl would have been the one guiding them, sensing the innate powers of Yawara in prisoners. So Uncle Carl's like, oh man, these guys got mystical powers. I can't hang around with them. They're going to sniff me out. I'll go kill Victorio and the operative, and then I'll circle back around for these folks. Yeah. He attacks them as the Skinwalker. Sky senses the attack, and then they all join in the fight. The battle breaks through a wall, uncovering the ghost army of Skinwalkers, and we get Uncle Carl's evil plan. Ha 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 ha! Trademark. The others stop him. The operative learns to trust Sky, and they all leave satisfied, knowing that the Power Glove is buried in a completely mineable mountain of rubble. As a show of trust in Sky, Yawara would then gift her Kahina's seal from out of nowhere, and the others would move on with their lives. I don't know if that is a better story, but I think that I like it better. And I'll fully admit, maybe I like it better because it's mine. And I'll also fully admit, I didn't have to come up with any of that on my own. I just remixed what John Ostrander already presented us with, which is a lot easier than coming up with something completely brand new on your own. That tangent explored. The basic premise of the existing issue does work. I just don't think it works very well. It's just not very entertaining. It tells its story, it has a clear place in continuity, which I definitely appreciate as a nerd, and it introduces Sky for future use. And she does get used, as mentioned. Ostrander will go on to write the Aquaman annual, released in December of 2013, where she next appears. Plus, when the Aquaman and the Others ongoing series does launch, she will be one of the cast members. The book is not written by John Ostrander, but it means that this issue isn't just a numbered part of the Aquaman series, it is an important piece of Aquaman's overall continuity and history, and it should be respected as such. So let's dive back into that ocean. Last time that we saw him, Arthur was bringing a wounded Atlantean soldier home after they had been captured and had some form of surgery done on them by the Scavenger or his men. Mera, meanwhile, had been captured by the icy dead king. He brought her to the Bermuda Triangle and sank a boat, hoping to pass the dimensional barrier into Mera's home colony of Xebel. She escaped him and fled, eventually finding Nereus, who refers to her as his wife. Props to the coloring team on this cover, by the way. It features a kind of small Aquaman caught up in a snowstorm, and from a penciling perspective, there isn't a lot of work here. It's easy to give pencilers a lot of the credit for a comic book because they are the main source of the lines that you're going to be looking at, but this cover is really a showcase for the colorist. We do see some movement of the snow and ice. There's like a little hill here or there, but otherwise, this is all Rod Reis, baby. It could be just a plain, uncolored white field with a tiny little Arthur in it. I've seen it done before, but no, we've got gradients and shades of white, cream, and blue all mixing and blending together like it's an actual snowstorm. It's not a terribly striking cover, in my opinion. If I was walking into a comic store and this was what the cover of Aquaman looked like, I got to admit, I don't think this would make me pick it up, but that doesn't mean it's not a well-made cover, and I appreciate all the color that went into this. Anyways, issue 21 opens in the waters of Xebel. Mera and Nereus have swum deeper into the territory, but Mera is still pretty nervous. She tries to warn Nereus about the dead king again, but he is not taking her seriously. No one has penetrated the barrier since it was made, he says. He has had warriors posted along their route, and he is confident that they'll be fine. Nobody's following her, and if somebody does, they're gonna get taken care of. He's honestly more worried about Mera, and he is relieved to see her home finally. She left 3 years ago to kill the king of Atlantis. They knew that it was going to take her some time, but 3 years? Mera stares at Nereus, not saying anything for a moment. Maybe she's weighing what to tell him. Maybe she's scared of how he'll react to what she has to say. Which I wouldn't buy, because this is Mera, but, hey, we don't know. After staring into her face for a time, Nereus says, "I have missed you. I have missed my wife." He takes her by the arm and pulls her into a kiss. She doesn't look happy about that during either. Controlling the water around them, Mera shoves him back, declaring that she is not his wife. They were going to be married, Nereus argues, pushing his way out of the ship debris that she knocked him into. You were supposed to kill the Atlantean who was going to kill all of us. We would then be wed, and we would have the throne, Mera. Mera stares at him. He wasn't like that, she says. Nereus starts to put things together. What happened out there, Mera? I met someone, she says. We transition nicely to Aquaman, the person that she met. He's left behind Tula and the Drift, making a water-based beeline to another one of the Scavenger's subs. The members of the Drift are amazed at his speed. None of them can swim like that. This guy, he isn't like them. No, Tula says. He isn't. We see Aquaman close in on the submarine. As he does, Arthur also narrates, relating his background, his stories, and the promise that someday he would be the king of Atlantis. That day is today. He slams into the submarine with enough force to dent its hull. We see red lights flash to life within, and water begins to pour in as metal bends and seals break. But Arthur doesn't stop there. He pushes, shoving the nearly 20-ton vehicle upward, and out of the flooping water, chucking it the final few feet. I don't know if you've ever tried to throw something underwater, dear listener, but it is not easy. You aren't just moving the object that you're throwing, you have to push with enough force to move all of the water that is in the way out of the way as well. And Arthur throws a 20-ton submarine up and out of the water with what looks like no sign of difficulty. Either Aquaman has been holding back this entire time, or this is the first time that we've seen him angry. The sub breaks the waterline with a crack of lightning. Aquaman climbs on top, his trident in hand. He tears off the upper hatch and drops inside, finding only chaos. He grabs the nearest man by the shirt and demands to know where the Scavenger is. The criminal responds, drawing Aquaman's attention to a nearby screen monitor. We can see that Mortimer is in his diving suit, and he says that he is far away from Aquaman. Arthur keeps things simple. He demands that Scavenger returns the weapons that he stole. But Scav isn't worried. He didn't steal any weapons. He's just cleaning up the mess left when Aquaman's people attacked and killed his people. Oh, please, Arthur responds. Don't pretend you care about anyone but yourself. Scavenger smiles. I do care, though. I care about you. You interest me. You interest the whole world right now, don't you? But the world doesn't know you, or Atlantis, like I do. Aquaman asks why he cut open the Atlantean that he rescued, And Scavenger shrugs. He was curious to see what they look like on the inside. They're as different from me as they are from you, he says. How long until they turn on you this time? A month? 6 months? A year? Arthur doesn't rise to the bait. I am going to find you, Scavenger. Last time we met, I was unprepared, Scavenger replies. I hope you do find me. I look forward to it. And then the transmission is cut. Arthur now stands on an empty, sinking submarine. But the Scavenger is inside of a large hangar. At least 6 subs rest in the water, waiting to launch. Missiles, torpedoes, and equipment of all kinds sits around the building. He orders someone to prep the subs. It starts tonight. So we've got 2 scenes here, Mara's and Arthur's. Right now, Mara's is all set up. We are learning a lot about her background very quickly, and I love it because it is all drama. Mara was promised to Nereus, but abandoned him and her people to be with Arthur? That's some Romeo and Juliet style love, baby. That's great. It obviously bodes ill for this story because there is no way that Nereus is cool with Mara A, failing in her mission, B, abandoning all of their shared goals, and C, shacking up with his self-declared nemesis. We're already about to face down this dead king guy, and Jeff Johns is already setting up another big problem for Arthur. I love it. Meanwhile, we have Arthur taking the fight to the Scavenger, and I just love everything about this scene. I love Aquaman literally throwing that submarine out of the water. Everyone forgets that Aquaman is a physical powerhouse, and getting to see it demonstrated like this is super cool. We saw him crack a cliff off of an underwater mountain during the arc with the trench, and he was able to fight equally with both Superman and Wonder Woman in the Throne of Atlantis crossover. It just goes to show you how much Arthur is holding back when he goes into action. And it also really makes me appreciate how patient he is when dealing with those who think that he's a joke. They think he's harmless, and he can crush them all like a bug. This man has the patience of a saint. But this scene also highlights perhaps one of Arthur's greatest weak points: his lack of a strategic mind. The Scavenger is 5 steps ahead of Arthur, and the king just can't seem to swim fast enough to catch up. I am a little bit thrown by his comment to Aquaman that the Scavenger is fascinated by him because... why? Everything we've seen regarding the Scavenger so far tells me that he is a practical, pragmatic man more concerned with making money than he is with human lives. So why the focus on Aquaman? This isn't really a complaint. It's more noticing that there seems to be more to Mortimer than was initially presented to us. It's just a matter of finding out what that is. I'm guessing we'll probably get a big villain speech within an issue or two, hopefully next issue, that'll help sell me on why the Scavenger has this fascination. I mean, honestly, part of the reason I'm talking about this comic is because I have a fascination with Aquaman, but I'm also not trying to kill him, so, you know, differences. At the prisons of Atlantis, we find Volko in his cell. He is shouting for the guards, and eventually a pair of them come over, exasperatedly asking, "What?" Volko says that he needs to speak to King Arthur immediately. He's been staring at the same seaweed for weeks, he reports. And the guards look at one another. So, has doing that finally driven you crazy? You off your rocker, old man? No. Don't you see? The currents have shifted. With fear in his eyes, Volko reports that the great lie is over. He has risen. Okay, it's ominous as hell. I like this basic idea, though, that a skilled enough person could read the very currents in the water to, like, soothsay. That's a really subtle superpower, I guess, but it's pretty neat. And I mean, saying that he has risen, I think, pretty obviously connects over to the dead king coming back from the dead. So, I mean, it's still, I don't know. It adds a nice layer to the dead king coming back that it's not something that goes completely unnoticed by everyone. But everybody else would be busy getting about the rest of the business of their daily lives that they just completely missed this kind of thing. And Volko's in the perfect position to stare at seaweed. So it works for him. And it gives Volko a reason to stay important to our narrative, too, which is kind of interesting. Elsewhere in Atlantis, we move to the medical bay, where the wounded Atlantean is being treated. His doctor is a female with pinkish hair, a crisscross of scar tissue? Coral growth, maybe? I mean, that's got to be scar tissue, right? Dances across her left cheek. This is Dr. Rodon. Arthur asks her what the scavenger did to him, but she kind of fights him back out of her medical area. The patient isn't talking anytime soon. He needs to be stabilized before she can even begin to operate, so she can't probe the wound right now. As soon as the doctor has something to report, she will let the king know. Suddenly, like a dozen different people show up to the clinic. One of them has news to report regarding the surface world. Another says that Volko won't stop raving, he wants to speak to the king. Rodon tries to shoo them all away, but the first group says that they've got news about Mara. And that gets Arthur's attention. She was attacked during an unexplained snowstorm in Amnesty Bay, they report, and a similar storm has appeared over the Bermuda Triangle. Aquaman shoots out of Atlantis like a torpedo. Not far away, Merc, Tula, and SWAT watch him leave. Back to the surface, Merc groans. Just like I thought. No, he's hunting the Scavenger, Tula argues. Then why is he going alone? SWAT asks. This is something else. He goes to the surface now, Merc says. We go next. Tula advises against it. With the king gone, them leaving would leave Atlantis defenseless. Oh, okay. I either remember what is about to happen in the end of this arc, or I can guess what's about to happen now. Oh, please. Atlantis isn't on death row, Merc argues, but your brother is. SWAT then tells them that Belle Reve is about 10 miles inland, and it's already hard to break into. It was made for people like them, he says. People who are more than human. We see a single panel of Orm staring at his sink's faucet, washing the falling water. So what'll it be, Tula? Merc asks. Do we rescue your brother together, or are you leaving him to die? Ooh, that's a good question. I love all the drama going on with this little, side cast that Johns has built around Arthur. Tula clearly loves and respects Orm, so, no way can she let him die. She has to go with them. But she has also demonstrated a loyalty to the throne and a defense of King Arthur up to this point. So, no way would she betray the throne either. Would she? At Xebel, Nereus' mood is quickly shifting to anger. You failed in your mission. We were wrong, Mara retorts. The stories that we were told about Atlantis just weren't true. Atlantis isn't our enemy. They don't even know Xebel exists. The Atlanteans slaughtered our ancestors and trapped us in the Triangle, Nereus argues. But why did they do those things? The stories never give us a reason because there wasn't one. The truth behind Xebel, behind the Triangle, is still a mystery, Mara argues. Your allegiance is not, Nereus shouts. Traitor! A pair of massive water hands erupt from his area, streaking towards Mara. She dissolves them with a thought, arguing that she isn't a traitor. But now that Nereus has opened up the fight, so do the other Xebelians. They charge at Mara, and are frozen in blocks of ice. Oh no. Mara knows this. He's here. Who? Nereus asks, looking around in horror. What have you brought to Xebel? And then they're both swallowed in ice. Arthur narrates the end of the issue. Mara hasn't told him much about her past, he says. He knows that she's from Xebel and that it is hidden inside the Bermuda Triangle. He knows that it takes a ship to open the portal, and that the Xebel people use those craft to make their homes and weapons. So he has towed a ship here and leaps above it. Aquaman drops through the ship trident first, wrecking it. and then he dives down for what feels like too long a time. The water shifts around him, becoming colder than any he's ever known. "Mara?" he calls out.
"The Queen is here,"
the dead king says,
"along with his other subjects."
He sits upon a throne of ice. Within the iceberg surrounding him are the people of Xebel, also frozen. "What have you done to Mara?" Arthur asks. "Who are you?" The dead king sits forward.
"It is a terrible fate to be forgotten, even worse than the tomb that Arthur's ancestors put him in. I am the first king of Atlantis, and I will rule the seven seas again."
As this reveal happens, John intercuts the scene with the next steps in our other narratives. Volko continues shouting about the great lie ending in his prison cell. Merc, Tula, and Swat exit the swamps of Louisiana on their way to save Orm. And Dr. Rodon finishes working on her patient, pulling out a small device from his wound. "What is this?" she asks. Above Atlantis, a fleet of submarines move into position, having followed the tracking beacon. The Scavenger has finally done it. He's found Atlantis, and it is ripe for the picking. This moment right here is a masterclass in pulling all of your plot threads together perfectly. Johns has been teasing the story of who and what sank Atlantis since the end of our first story arc, and we've had a bunch of small breadcrumbs scattered throughout the comic so far. We do know that Atlantis used to be on the surface, but that someone sank it. The water hologram dude that we saw back in issue 5 with the A-glyph said that the enemy planned to sink the city because the king and queen kept something from the people. Was that king that he's referring to this king, the dead king? Perhaps whatever this king kept from the people is the great lie that Volko is now ranting about, whatever that is. I don't know. There's a lot going on here. The hologram did say that their pursuer attacked them with the power of storms, which could mean the dead king's snowstorms, I suppose. But we also know that Atlantis does have weather control technology, demonstrated by Orm's silly-looking helmet, so maybe that's just something common in their society. When Volko got custody of the Dead King's scepter at the end of the Others story arc, he did order his men to increase the storm, so clearly he had access to weather-controlling technology too, and he was exiled from Atlantis at the time. So, maybe weather-controlling technology to Atlanteans is, on every Atlantean iPhone or something like that. It's just an app. Storm kills a bunch of people. I don't know. I also like the metaphorical idea that this king represents quote-unquote true Atlanteans, given that he was their first king, right? This guy represents old Atlantis. This whole arc is exploring Arthur's devotion to Atlantis and whether he is worthy to be its king or not. We've seen him working to prove that idea, but characters like Merc, Tula, and Swat have been questioning it, and Tula is kind of as close to an ally as Arthur has right now. So with the Dead King showing up, it's as if Atlantis itself is judging Arthur, his modernity, and his progressiveness, and we'll see how that goes. But we also have the Scavenger showing up to Atlantis. Remember when I said that the Atlantean with the scar could have had something removed or something put in? Yeah, I honestly remembered this plot point. It's the only thing that I've remembered so far. I don't know how or why this single detail stuck in my mind, but there we go. And on top of that danger, the city's other main defenders, Merc and Tula, are gone on a rogue mission to rescue Orm. I love Merc saying that Atlantis doesn't need them for a few hours. What's the worst that could happen, guys? Well, we're about to find out. I also love the little tiny glance of Orm that we got just staring at his faucet water. It's this great character moment for him that I super appreciate, given everything else that we've got going on in this comic at the moment. This guy is looking for any connection to home that he can find, whether that's the rain that we heard referenced last issue, or it's just a running water faucet. It's great. Next time, it all happens. And I mean it all happens. Aquaman confronts the dead king. The Scavenger attacks Atlantis. Merc's group makes it to Belle Reve in order to rescue the imprisoned Orm. And the great lie about Arthur and his ancestry is revealed. Join me in a week for Comic Book Breakdown episode 26.19 of Aquaman, King versus King. If you enjoyed this episode of Breakdown, please make sure to hit that like button, and if you are not subscribed to the show, then click on that as well. I love getting feedback, and I would really appreciate it if you did so. If you have any questions, concerns, or would like to suggest a comic or a series to me, Breakdown can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and on a variety of podcast platforms, with links in the description for this episode below, as well as the email cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Thank you for your time and attention.